The conference room felt like a tomb. My boss, Marcus Blackwell, stood at the head of the table with that smug grin I'd come to despise. In his hands were documents, my documents. My invention. 3 years of sleepless nights, failed prototypes, and breakthroughs that kept me going when nothing else could. According to company policy, Marcus announced, his voice dripping with false professionalism, all intellectual property developed on company time belongs to the company. Which means this brilliant innovation is now mine. The room spun. I'd worked on this at home, on weekends, with my own money. But I'd made one mistake. I'd used the company computer once to run a simulation. Just once. My co-workers avoided eye contact. Marcus leaned forward, his smile widening. Oh, and Alex? You're fired. Effective immediately. We can't have someone who doesn't understand basic employment contracts working here. My hands trembled as I tried to speak, but no words came. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. Not after everything. Marcus didn't just fire me, he made a spectacle of it. He called security while I was still processing his words, still trying to comprehend how my life had just imploded. Make sure everyone sees this, he told the guards loud enough for the entire floor to hear. They handed me a cardboard box, the kind reserved for fired employees. My desk was already being cleared by an intern who wouldn't look at me. I packed my few personal items, a photo of my parents, a coffee mug, some pens, while Marcus stood nearby, arms crossed, watching like a warden. My co-workers pretended to work, but I felt their eyes. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked relieved it wasn't them. Marcus followed me to the elevator, making comments about loyalty and company values. When the doors opened, he patted my shoulder with mock sympathy. Good luck out there, Alex. You'll need it. The elevator descended, and with each floor, my humiliation grew heavier. I was 32 years old, unemployed, and robbed of my greatest achievement. I sat in my car for an hour before I could even start the engine. The parking garage was dim and cold, matching the emptiness inside me. 3 years. 3 years of my life poured into that invention, a revolutionary water purification system that could change lives in developing countries. And Marcus was going to profit from it. My vision blurred with tears I'd been holding back. I slammed my fists against the steering wheel until they hurt. How could I have been so stupid? How could I have trusted that company, signed those papers without reading every word? My phone buzzed. Bills. Rent was due in 2 weeks. My savings would last maybe 3 months if I was careful. The patent would make millions, and I'd get nothing. But as I sat there in the darkness, something shifted. The despair began to crystallize into something else. Something colder. Something dangerous. Anger. Pure, focused anger. Marcus thought he'd won. He thought I'd disappear quietly, fade away like all the others he'd stepped on. He was wrong. My phone rang at midnight. The caller ID showed unknown, but I answered anyway. Alex? It's me, Tyler. My former coworker's voice was hushed, urgent. Tyler had always been decent, one of the few who'd congratulated me when I'd had my breakthrough. Listen, you need to know something. Marcus is moving fast, like, really fast. He's already in talks with some venture capitalists about selling the patent. I overheard him on a call today. He's asking for $15 million. My stomach dropped. 15 million. For my work. My invention. There's more, Tyler continued. He's rushing everything. The paperwork, the patent filing, the contracts. He's so eager to cash out that he's cutting corners. I thought you should know. I gripped the phone tighter. Why are you telling me this? Because what he did to you was wrong, Tyler said simply. And because I've seen him do this before. You're not his first victim, Alex. Just his most recent. After we hung up, I stared at the ceiling of my apartment. $15 million. And Marcus was in a hurry. People who rushed made mistakes. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to fight back. The lawyer's office smelled like old books and expensive coffee. Amanda Rodriguez sat across from me, reviewing the employment contract I'd signed 3 years ago when I joined Blackwell Technologies. Her expression was unreadable, which terrified me more than anger would have. I couldn't afford a lawyer like her. She was charging me on contingency, which meant she thought there might be a case. Or she felt sorry for me. This is a terrible contract, Amanda finally said, looking up. Borderline exploitative. But you did sign it. My heart sank. However, she continued, a hint of a smile appearing, there might be something we can work with. You mentioned you developed most of this invention at home, correct? On your own time, with your own resources? I nodded eagerly. Then we have an argument. The issue is proving it, and that's going to be difficult. She leaned forward. But there's something else I noticed. If Marcus is rushing to sell the patent as quickly as you say, he might make legal mistakes. Filing errors. Missing documentation. We need to watch him very carefully. She handed me her card. Don't give up yet, Alex. The law has a funny way of catching up to people who get too greedy. I left her office with something I hadn't felt in days, hope. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father. He'd passed away 5 years ago, but his voice still echoed in my mind. I remembered being 10 years old, watching him work in his garage workshop. He was a carpenter, not an engineer, but he understood the value of creating something with your own hands. Alex, he'd told me once when a bully had stolen my science fair project, the world isn't always fair. Sometimes people will try to take what's yours. But here's what they can't steal: your knowledge, your ability to create, and your spirit. He'd helped me build a new project in 3 days. It wasn't as good as the first, but we'd won 3rd place anyway. Never let someone else's actions define your worth, he'd said. And never, ever give up when you know you're right. I walked to my closet and pulled out an old box. Inside were his tools, his measuring tape, his favorite hammer, a notebook filled with his sketches. I opened the notebook, running my fingers over his handwriting. I won't give up, Dad, I whispered. I promise. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. For the next week, I barely left my apartment. My laptop became my universe. I researched everything: patent law, corporate acquisitions, venture capital, hostile takeovers. Terms I'd never cared about before became my obsession. I learned about stock purchases, shareholder rights, and board meetings. I made spreadsheets tracking Blackwell Technologies' financial history. The company was smaller than I'd realized, maybe 50 employees, 20 million in annual revenue. Marcus owned 60% of the shares. The rest were divided among early investors and employees. I discovered something interesting: the company had been struggling lately. 2 major contracts had fallen through in the past year. They'd laid off 15 people last quarter. Marcus needed my invention to save his company. That's why he'd stolen it. That's why he was rushing to sell. My phone rang. It was Amanda. Alex, I found something. Marcus filed the patent paperwork, but he made several errors. Technical ones. He used the wrong classification code, and some of the documentation references work done before you even joined the company. My pulse quickened. What does that mean? It means we can challenge it. We can tie this up in court for months, maybe years. The coffee shop was crowded, but I spotted him immediately. Victor Chen. No, wait, I needed a different name. Victor Stone. He was exactly as Tyler had described: mid-50s, silver hair, expensive suit, and eyes that missed nothing. I'd cold-called 50 investors before Tyler had given me Victor's name. You're the one who invented the Aquapure system, Victor said without preamble as I sat down. Not a question. A statement. Marcus Blackwell claims he invented it. Marcus Blackwell is a thief, I replied, surprising myself with my boldness. Victor smiled. I know. I almost invested in his company 5 years ago. Then I met him. Didn't like what I saw. He stirred his coffee slowly. I've been following your story. I have friends at Blackwell Technologies. They tell me you're the real deal, and Marcus is a fraud. He leaned forward. Here's what I know, that invention of yours is worth far more than 15 million. In the right hands, with proper development and marketing, it could be worth hundreds of millions. My mouth went dry. I want to help you, Victor continued. Not just to get your patent back. I want to help you take the whole company. Amanda called me at 6 in the morning, her voice electric with excitement. Alex, wake up. I found it. I found the flaw. I sat up in bed, instantly alert. What flaw? Marcus filed the patent application himself instead of using the company's law firm. He probably wanted to keep it quiet, move faster. But he made a critical mistake. He forgot to file the declaration of inventorship form within the required timeframe. My legal knowledge was limited, but I understood the importance. Which means the patent application is incomplete. It can be challenged, possibly invalidated. But here's the beautiful part, because he filed it fraudulently, claiming he was the sole inventor when he knows he wasn't, this could open him up to criminal charges. I was fully awake now, my heart pounding. How long do we have? The window to challenge is narrow. We need to file within the next 2 weeks. But Alex, this is going to get expensive. Court fees, expert witnesses, documentation, we're talking at least $50,000 to fight this properly. 50,000. I had maybe 12,000 in savings. I'll find the money, I said. I'll find a way. Amanda and I filed our challenge on a Tuesday morning. The lawsuit named both Marcus and Blackwell Technologies, claiming fraud, theft of intellectual property, and wrongful termination. We requested an injunction to prevent the sale of the patent pending investigation. We also filed a complaint with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, documenting the missing paperwork and fraudulent claims. That same afternoon, Victor and I met with his legal team. They were different from Amanda, corporate sharks in $1,000 suits who spoke in terms of acquisitions and market dominance. Here's the play, Victor explained, spreading documents across his conference table. We challenge the patent publicly. That creates uncertainty. Uncertainty kills Marcus's sale. While he's distracted by legal problems, we start quietly buying shares in Blackwell Technologies from any investor willing to sell. That's legal? I asked. Perfectly legal, one of Victor's lawyers confirmed. As long as we disclose our intentions if we acquire more than 5%. I signed the papers that would make me Victor's partner in this venture. It felt surreal. Days ago I'd been fired and broken. Now I was planning a corporate takeover. Remember, Victor said as I left, this is war. And in war, you strike where your enemy is weakest. I saw the article while having breakfast at a diner. My hands shook as I read Marcus's interview in the industry magazine. The Aquapure system represents the culmination of years of my personal research, Marcus was quoted as saying. As CEO and chief innovator of Blackwell Technologies, I've always believed in pushing the boundaries of what's possible. There was a photo of him in his office, holding a prototype, my prototype, like a trophy. The article called him a visionary and one of the tech industry's rising stars. I felt sick. But I kept reading. The journalist had asked about me. Alex Mercer was a junior engineer who unfortunately didn't work out, Marcus had said dismissively. Sometimes people aren't suited for the innovative culture we maintain here. No hard feelings. No hard feelings. I'd given that company everything, and he reduced me to a footnote. A failure. An afterthought. Other diners probably wondered why I was gripping my coffee cup so hard. But I couldn't help it. The rage was back, hotter than before. Marcus wanted to be famous. He wanted recognition, respect, glory. Fine. Let him enjoy it while it lasted. Because soon, the whole world would know the truth. Victor called me to his office 3 days later. The view from the 42nd floor was spectacular, the whole city spread out like a promise. I spoke with my investment group, Victor said, gesturing for me to sit. They're in. We're prepared to commit $5 million to this project. $5 million. The number was incomprehensible. That's not just for the legal battle, Victor continued. That's for everything. The lawsuit, yes, but also stock purchases, operational capital, and eventual acquisition of Blackwell Technologies. He pulled up a presentation on his screen. Here's the plan: we buy shares from anyone willing to sell. Small amounts, different buyers, nothing that raises red flags. Meanwhile, your lawsuit creates chaos. Marcus's investors get nervous. His sale falls through. The stock price drops. We buy more. I stared at the screen, watching the strategy unfold in charts and projections. And then? Then we own controlling interest in his company, Victor said with a predator's smile. And you, Alex, become his boss. You fire him. You take back your invention. You get justice. I thought about my father's words about fairness and persistence. This wasn't quite what he'd meant. But sometimes justice required getting your hands dirty. I'm in, I said. The next 3 weeks were a blur of paperwork and secret meetings. Victor's team moved like ghosts through the financial markets. We bought shares from early investors who wanted out. We bought from former employees who'd taken stock options instead of bonuses. We bought from Marcus's college roommate who needed cash for a medical emergency. Each purchase was small, 2% here, 3% there. Nothing that would trigger disclosure requirements. Nothing that would alert Marcus to what was happening. We used shell companies, investment funds, and individual buyers. All untraceable back to me. All perfectly legal. I kept working with Amanda on the patent lawsuit. We gathered evidence. Emails I'd sent myself documenting my progress, receipts for materials I'd purchased, testimony from Tyler and other colleagues who'd witnessed my work. The case was solid. Maybe not perfect, but solid enough to create reasonable doubt about Marcus's ownership. Meanwhile, Marcus was having problems. The venture capitalists he'd been courting pulled out, spooked by the lawsuit. His company's stock price dropped 15%. Employees were nervous. 2 senior engineers quit. And Marcus had no idea I was behind any of it. He thought I was just a bitter ex-employee with a lawyer. He had no idea I was coming for everything. Tyler called me on a Friday evening. Alex, things are getting bad here. Really bad. I'd been reviewing financial documents, but I set them aside. How bad? Marcus is panicking. The patent sale fell through, and now the company's in trouble. We lost another major client last week. There's talk of more layoffs. Tyler lowered his voice. But here's the thing, I've been looking at the financial reports. I'm on the operations committee now, so I have access. Alex, Blackwell Technologies is 1 bad quarter away from bankruptcy. This was news. Good news. How is that possible? Marcus has been spending money he doesn't have. Expensive office renovations, company cars, a marketing campaign that went nowhere. He's been using projected revenue from your patent to justify everything. Now that the sale's dead, the numbers don't work. Tyler paused. There's something else. Some investment group has been quietly buying up shares. Marcus doesn't know who, but he's worried. He's been calling investors, trying to figure out who's moving against him. I smiled. Thanks for the information, Tyler. Are you behind this? He asked. Be careful, Alex. Marcus is desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. I promised I would be careful. But I was counting on Marcus being desperate. Desperate people made mistakes. I heard about the holiday party through Tyler's texts. Marcus had insisted on throwing an elaborate Christmas celebration despite the company's financial problems. He'd rented an expensive venue, hired a live band, and invited all the employees. The message was clear: everything is fine, don't worry, we're still successful. Tyler sent me photos throughout the night. Marcus in a designer suit, giving speeches. Marcus toasting with champagne. Marcus laughing with the few investors who still supported him. Then Tyler sent me a video. In it, Marcus was drunk, his face flushed, his words slurred. You know what the problem with this industry is, he was saying to a group of employees. People who can't hack it. People who think they deserve credit for doing their jobs. I built this company. I created the innovations. Some people just aren't built for success. The camera shook as Tyler whispered, he's talking about you. Marcus continued, that former engineer, what was his name? Alex something? Perfect example. Couldn't handle the pressure of working for a real company. Had to make up stories about contributing more than he did. Pathetic. The employees around him looked uncomfortable, but no one contradicted him. I watched the video 3 times. Then I sent it to Victor with a message, how soon can we move? Victor's conference room was full. Lawyers, financial advisors, investment partners, all the people who'd been working behind the scenes. We're ready, Victor announced. As of this morning, our collective holdings in Blackwell Technologies stand at 47%. We need 51% for controlling interest. A woman named Patricia, one of Victor's senior partners, pulled up a spreadsheet. We've identified 3 more shareholders willing to sell. Combined, they hold 8%. If we acquire their shares, we'll have 55%. What's the cost? Victor asked. $2.3 million. We have the capital. I couldn't quite process it. We were actually going to do this. We were going to take Marcus's company. Victor turned to me. Alex, you understand what happens next, right? Once we file the disclosure documents, Marcus will know. He'll fight. It'll get ugly. I'm ready, I said, and I meant it. Then let's end this, Victor said. Patricia, draw up the purchase agreements. Amanda, prepare the disclosure documents. We move on Monday morning. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Victor pulled me aside. How do you feel? I thought about my father. About the 3 years I'd spent on my invention. About Marcus's smug face as he'd fired me. I feel ready for justice, I said. The hearing was held in a federal courthouse downtown. Amanda and I arrived early, sitting at the plaintiff's table while Marcus and his lawyers occupied the defense side. Marcus looked confident, almost bored. He'd brought 3 attorneys, all from expensive firms. He thought he'd already won. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Harper, reviewed the documents carefully. This is a preliminary hearing to determine whether to grant an injunction preventing the sale or transfer of U.S. Patent Application Number 2024 to 87,654, she began. Amanda stood. Your Honor, we have evidence that the patent application was filed fraudulently. Mr. Blackwell claims sole inventorship of a system that was actually created by my client, Mr. Alex Mercer, while employed at Blackwell Technologies. Marcus's lead attorney objected. The employment contract clearly states, the employment contract is not relevant to patent law, Judge Harper interrupted. What matters is who actually invented the technology. For 3 hours, we presented evidence. My emails documenting development. Receipts for equipment. Expert testimony about the technical aspects of the invention. Tyler testified via video call, confirming he'd witnessed me working on the system. Marcus's lawyers fought hard, but cracks were showing. They couldn't produce any early documentation. They couldn't explain technical details. Marcus himself couldn't answer basic questions about how the system worked. Judge Harper's ruling came down like a hammer. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds sufficient cause to question the inventorship claims in the patent application. Therefore, I am granting a preliminary injunction preventing the sale, transfer, or licensing of the disputed patent pending full trial. Marcus's face went white. His lawyers immediately began arguing for an appeal, but Judge Harper was unmoved. Furthermore, she continued, this court is referring this matter to the United States Attorney's Office for possible investigation into patent fraud. Patent fraud. Criminal charges. Marcus stood up, shouting, this is insane. I own that company. I own that patent. Judge Harper's gavel cracked. Mr. Blackwell, control yourself or I will hold you in contempt. As we left the courthouse, I saw Marcus on his phone, probably calling investors, trying to do damage control. His world was crumbling, and he knew it. Amanda squeezed my shoulder. That went better than I expected. The fraud referral was a bonus. I couldn't stop smiling. We'd won the first battle. But the war was just beginning. That afternoon, news of the ruling hit the tech blogs. Blackwell Technologies' stock price dropped another 20%. Marcus's reputation was damaged. And we were ready for the final move. The paperwork was finalized on a Wednesday. Victor and I sat in his office, signing document after document. Stock purchase agreements. Disclosure forms. Corporate filing documents. With each signature, we took control of Blackwell Technologies. Patricia walked in with a bottle of champagne. Congratulations. As of 4 p.m. today, you collectively own 55% of Blackwell Technologies. Marcus Blackwell is no longer the majority shareholder. I couldn't quite process it. A month ago, I'd been fired and broken. Now I own my former boss's company. When do we tell him? I asked. Victor smiled. We don't. Not yet. We schedule an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. Mandatory attendance. We tell him then, in front of everyone. That seems cruel, I said. Victor's smile widened. You're right. It does. We sent the meeting notification that evening. Subject line, mandatory emergency board meeting, all board members must attend. Marcus would receive it and probably assume it was about the company's financial problems. He'd prepare a speech, maybe some excuse about temporary setbacks. He'd walk into that meeting expecting to maintain control. He had no idea that control had already been taken from him. I barely slept that weekend. I kept imagining Monday morning, picturing Marcus's face when he realized what had happened. Part of me felt guilty. But mostly, I felt ready. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in Blackwell Technologies' main conference room. I arrived early with Victor and our legal team. We took seats at the table, me directly across from where Marcus usually sat. At 8:55, the board members began filing in. 7 people total, including Marcus. They looked confused to see me, the former employee, sitting at the table. Marcus was the last to arrive. He stopped dead when he saw me, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and something like fear. What is he doing here? Marcus demanded, pointing at me. Victor stood calmly. Mr. Blackwell, please take your seat. We have important business to discuss. I'm the CEO of this company, Marcus said, his voice rising. I decide what business we discuss. And I want him out. Actually, Victor said pleasantly, you're not the CEO anymore. Please sit down. The room went silent. Marcus's face turned red. What are you talking about? Patricia slid a folder across the table to each board member. As you'll see in these documents, a group of investors now owns 55% of Blackwell Technologies. As majority shareholders, we've voted to make some changes. Marcus grabbed the folder, his hands shaking as he read. I watched him process the information, watched the moment he understood. This is impossible, he whispered. It's quite possible, Victor said. And quite legal. Welcome to the new Blackwell Technologies. Marcus tried to speak, but no words came out. He looked at the other board members, searching for support, but they were reading the documents with varying expressions of shock and concern. As of today, I said, speaking for the first time, I am the new CEO of Blackwell Technologies. The board has voted to restructure the company's leadership. My voice was steady, stronger than I'd expected. You can't do this, Marcus finally managed. I built this company. This is mine. Victor leaned forward. You stole from your employees. You committed patent fraud. You ran this company into the ground through mismanagement and greed. This isn't a hostile takeover, Mr. Blackwell. This is justice. I stood up, and everyone's eyes turned to me. You took my invention. You took my job. You tried to take my future. But you made one critical mistake, you underestimated me. I walked around the table until I stood directly in front of Marcus. You told me I wasn't built for success. You were wrong. I'm built for survival. I'm built to fight. And I never, ever give up. Marcus's lawyer started to say something about wrongful termination, but Patricia cut him off. We're prepared for that. Our legal team has documentation of multiple instances of fraud and mismanagement. Any lawsuit Mr. Blackwell files will be met with countersuit. Marcus looked around the room desperately, but he was alone. I walked to the door and opened it. 2 security guards stood in the hallway, the same ones who'd escorted me out weeks ago. They recognized me, their expressions carefully neutral. Gentlemen, I said calmly, please escort Mr. Blackwell from the building. He's been terminated, effective immediately. The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. Marcus jumped to his feet. You can't do this. I'll sue. I'll destroy you. You're welcome to try, Victor said mildly. But I should mention that the FBI is currently reviewing the patent fraud case. You might want to save your energy for that. The security guard stepped forward. Marcus backed away from them, his eyes wild. This is my company. I built this. No, I said quietly. Your employees built this. Your engineers, your designers, your sales team. You just took credit for their work. Just like you took credit for mine. Marcus lunged toward me, but the guards caught him. I'll make you regret this, he snarled. You'll what? I interrupted. Steal my patent? Fire me? Humiliate me in front of my peers? You already did all that. And look where we are now. The fight went out of him suddenly. He sagged between the security guards, looking smaller somehow. Please, he said, his voice breaking. Please don't do this. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Take him to his office, I instructed the guards. Give him 10 minutes to collect his personal belongings. I followed the guards and Marcus to his office, my office now. It was large, expensively furnished, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Marcus had always loved this office. He'd made sure everyone knew it was his sanctuary. We waited while he moved around the space numbly, picking up personal items. A coffee mug. Some photos. A desk lamp. The security guards watched him carefully. I stood by the door, silent. Marcus opened a drawer and pulled out a leather portfolio, some expensive pens. He was moving slowly, perhaps hoping someone would change their mind, that this was all a nightmare he'd wake up from. Time's up, one of the guards finally said. Marcus turned to me, his eyes red. Was it worth it? All of this, was it worth it? I thought about his question. About my father's lessons. About the 3 years I'd spent on my invention. About the month I'd spent planning this moment. Yes, I said simply. I walked to his desk, my desk, and opened a drawer. Inside was a cardboard box, the same kind they'd given me when they'd fired me. I pulled it out and handed it to him. For your things, I said. He stared at the box, understanding the symbolism. His hands shook as he took it from me. You know what's funny? I said as he placed his belongings inside. You could have just paid me fairly. You could have shared the patent. You could have been a decent human being. But you chose greed. The walk from the office to the elevators felt longer than it was. Employees had gathered in the hallways, word having spread about what was happening. They watched silently as Marcus carried his box, flanked by security guards. Some looked satisfied. Others uncomfortable. A few whispered to each other. Tyler stood near the elevator, his expression unreadable. Marcus saw him and stopped. You, Marcus said bitterly. You helped him, didn't you? You leaked information. Tyler met his gaze steadily. I told the truth. That's all. Traitor, Marcus spat. No, I said, stepping between them. He was loyal to the right thing. There's a difference. The elevator arrived with a soft ding. The doors opened. Marcus stepped inside, still clutching his box. He turned to face us, his expression a mixture of rage and defeat. This isn't over, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, I replied. It is. The doors closed on his face. Silence fell over the hallway for a moment. Then, quietly at first, someone started clapping. Then another person. Then another. Within seconds, the entire floor was applauding. Not loudly, not dramatically, but genuinely. Tyler approached me. That was the hardest thing I've ever watched. That was the hardest thing I've ever done, I admitted. But it needed to be done. For me, for everyone he'd wronged, and for everyone he would have wronged in the future. 1 week later, I sat in my new office, Marcus's old office, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and red. The transition had been smoother than expected. Employees were relieved. Investors were cautiously optimistic. The patent dispute was being resolved in my favor. Blackwell Technologies was being renamed Aquapure Innovations. A fresh start. My invention would be properly developed now, with proper funding and proper credit. Lives would actually be improved. Victor had taken a board position but left day-to-day operations to me. You earned this, he'd said. Now prove you can build something better than Marcus ever could. Amanda called to tell me the FBI had officially charged Marcus with patent fraud. He'd be fighting legal battles for years. Tyler had been promoted to Chief Operating Officer. He'd earned it. I pulled out my father's notebook, running my fingers over his handwriting one more time. I did it, Dad, I whispered. I didn't give up. My phone buzzed with a news alert. The industry magazine that had praised Marcus was now running a story about his downfall, about my comeback. The headline read, From Fired to CEO, The Incredible True Story of Patent Theft and Justice. I leaned back in my chair, allowing myself a moment of satisfaction. Marcus had tried to steal my future. Instead, I'd taken his. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. Out of justice. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the city lights began to glow. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, new opportunities. But tonight, I'd simply breathe. I'd simply exist in the knowledge that persistence, truth, and justice had won. They tried to steal my future, I said to the empty office. I took theirs instead. If you loved this story of justice and revenge, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear that underdogs can win. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation. Trust me, you don't want to miss the next story. It's even more unbelievable than this one. Subscribe now. Thanks for watching.